Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. You are in the right place. The new day in God has just gone off here in Cape Town. We know you're all logging on, so very warm welcome. So today's investment webinar is hosted in conjunction with Wealth Masters, and they are your trusted wealth creation partner with a proven track record of success. And we have our Wealth Masters guest specialist today, Kurt Kutsia and Anna-Marie Schutter with me today. And today's topic is all about maximizing property returns with trusts, the ultimate guide to property investments. You can expect to learn about the benefits of using trusts in property investments, how to utilize them to maximize returns. And our specialist team will also be sharing their expertise in high return property portfolios. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our two guests. First of all, Kurt, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, thank you, Neil, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, guys, I'm the founder of the Wealth Masters Club. Back in 1996, I discovered something that changed my life and the lives of thousands of members in that club. It was the secrets of the Duke of Westminster. Not going into it into detail now. It's what I do on the full day presentations. Then I go into detail. But just the short thing about what I discovered was I discovered trust for property. And the way the Duke is doing it was actually mind-blowing. And it was not just that Duke, it was like for 400 years, all the Dukes of Westminster did it exactly the same. And that is what I'm sharing with people, is that new way of investing in property. It's not so new anymore now because thousands of our members are doing it. But many people out there still do not understand what we do. I mean, if I tell you, I bought my first house already in 1983, but I sold them again, bought and sell and fix and sell. And then after I discovered in 1996 the Duke's secret, I started keeping my houses. I'm not selling them anymore. And so today I can say, although I own nothing, I'm the poorest person here on this call, but I do control thousands of houses. And I think that is the secret of real wealth creation.
Wonderful. Great having you on the webinar, Kurt. And of course, last but not least, our other guest on the panel, and that's Anna-Marie Schutter. Anna-Marie, just introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Hi, Neil. Hi, everyone. Neil, thank you so much for inviting us. I'm Anna-Marie Schutter, and I'm the Managing Director of Treasury Trust Services. And that's one of the companies in the Destinata group of companies. Wonderful.
Excellent. Great having you on, Anna-Marie. I know that Kurt would bring you along because you're the specialist, you're the detail person, and he needs backup. Great. Okay, so Kurt, I know you've got a real life story, and I think you're very good at that. And in pertaining to today's topic, in terms of why you see a need to create a trust structure, and you set the scene very nicely. And so maybe just set that scene, and in terms of why you see the need for that trust structure, and also when you're talking about building a property portfolio.
Yeah, you see, Neil, my background actually is I'm a risk manager, and that is what I did. Just to go a bit back, I had one of the biggest, I owned one of the biggest short-term insurance brokerages in South Africa, Profcover, many years ago. But anyway, so risk management, my background. So when I started investing seriously in Profcover, it was after I sold the Profcover group back in 1998. I thought I would retire then, and then I realized it's very boring to be retired. So I came back and I started with my property portfolio, built it out to focus 100% on it. But unless you bring some risk in, the rewards will always be just average. I mean, it's not for nothing that there's a saying that says risk, or let me rather say reward is the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And the lower the risk, the lower the reward. So if you really want to maximize your rewards with property, then you have to take care of the risk first. And the risk is the financing. And we work with the bank's money. And I think that is one of our big secrets, is the three principles on which we built is OPM, OPT, and OPS. So OPM is other people's money. We work with the bank's money. We make money with the bank's money. And you can make like 20 times more money with the bank's money than what you can make with your own money. You just have to get to the banks, and I will. So we buy houses with the bank's money, and then we get other people to pay the banks, the tenants. So that is what we do. That's what we manage. But it's still high risk, and the risk is all on you. You sign the sureties for those bonds and those mortgages. So therefore, you have to separate the risk from your personal assets. And that is what we are masters with. And the other OPT stands for other people's time, because so many people make the mistake and try to manage everything themselves. Big mistake. And the last one, OPS, stands for other people's skills. I'm not an attorney. Anna-Marie is a lawyer. She's a trust lawyer. So I use people like that to help me to build my portfolio experts.
Good. So just let's talk a little bit about the premise of the Wealth Masters Club. I mean, the whole premise is to create structures for investment that leads to lower and in some cases zero tax implications. Now, if you set up something like that, don't you feel that like you're being a little bit unpatriotic? As Cyril Ramaphosa said to John Steenhuisen when he asked him a question about whether the Russians had taken away the arms. So maybe if you could just put it in the context of, the lower, in some cases, zero tax implications. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's most of the time zero tax. I'm talking about income tax or profit tax. There are so many taxes that I cannot make all taxes zero. So there are taxes that I think about. But if they use my tax to fix the potholes or to get ESCOM fixed and things like that, then I won't mind to pay tax at all. So I really do not feel unpatriotic. What we do is, but we also have a business masters network also, where we make company profits also tax-free. And it's a matter of the more money we can keep in our pockets. I really think seriously we can manage the money better for South Africa's benefit, because we employ people, we build big businesses, we help with the housing shortage in South Africa. We buy houses, we build houses, we develop some, and that is what we do with the money that we save, with the tax savings. And all these tax savings that we do is 100% legit. It is according to the SARS rules. So it's not that we are actually stealing the country's money or something like that. Would have been unpatriotic. That is maybe what some of the government people do, but we are not doing that. So we pay what we have to pay, but not a cent more. And that is all. And we actually create more tax for government, because when we employ people and we pay them salaries, one tax that we cannot make free or zero is pay as you earn. So the tax on salaries is actually making up for the tax saving that we have on the profits and so on.
Okay, great. So good. Also, there's the idea of the double trust structure, and where does that come from? Can you maybe share that? And how did you initially implement this in your business and your property portfolio?
You see the big risk of property investing, or with anything, with business, anything, because so many things can go wrong, so many things that are completely out of your control. Like, for example, a recession that starts in America because of the subprime crisis, flows over to South Africa and destroys many people's lives, their businesses, their property portfolios, and so on. And it's not just that. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop right there. So if I owe money to the bank and I cannot pay the bond, then the bank's going to come and take my house. It's just a matter of time. And then they put it on an auction. And as we all know, on auctions, the price is very seldom, if ever, more than 50% of the value that they are selling for. So you still owe the bank, after they took your property, you still owe the bank a lot of money. So then they come again. And eventually they take your furniture, they take everything. So you get sequestrated eventually. That is the end of that line. And that is something that started because of a subprime crisis in America, for example. So it's not because you're a bad investor or a bad business person. It is just a way of life. So then a way to conquer that, because what we also know is these downturns never last very long. Then it's an upturn again. And that is the nice thing about property. When you come to one of my full day presentations, you will see, and I'll show you the stats and on the slides, and the graphs and so on, and you will see property in South Africa especially is performing excellently well, better than in Australia. But anyways, so to conquer that problem of the fear of losing everything or the possibility of losing everything, many years ago, I had long discussions after I discovered the Duke secret, which didn't cover everything. But then I had long discussions with trust brains in South Africa, professor in trust law at Pretoria University, for example, and so on. And we developed those days the wealth mastery system. And what we did was, for the first time ever, we separated our assets from our liabilities in a legal way. There's no other way to do it than this way that I'm talking about. You see, the problem is that your assets and liabilities are always in the same entity. That is the way that we were raised. That is the way they teach us at university, or rather they don't teach us the right things, the opposite, or the solutions for these problems. So, and then insurance companies also promote their products and so on, but they never promote the separation of assets and liabilities, which is the biggest risk, and which you would think that the insurance company, which is a risk management company, that they would focus on stuff like that, but it's not in their benefit, I think, to focus on something like that. So what we do now in short, Neale, is we absolutely make a list of all our assets. That is when you go to Anne-Marie on a consultation, that is what she will start with you and show you what you should do, is you make a list of all your assets. That's like your movables, your furniture, all those stuff. And the family house is also part of your assets. The family house is one we never refinance. I suppose we will talk about refinancing a little later. So the debt is always running on the other properties, but on the family house, you pay it off. And you don't want to lose your family house if something goes wrong with the business. And the property portfolio on the side, the rental property, the buy-to-let portfolio, that is the business, where the things can go wrong. So we separate these two from each other. That's a big thing. So now the creditors sit with a trust. Everything belongs to a property trust, you can call it, and the rest belongs to a family trust. So the beauty of trust law is that the one trust is never liable for the debt of another trust. Although they are beneficiaries of each other, doesn't matter. The one is still not liable for the debt of another one, unless the family trust signs surety for the property trust, which you should never do. That's what they teach our members. And the banks don't expect us anyways for the family trust to sign surety. The reason why we get away with this with the banks, or we still get mortgages, 100% mortgages in many cases, is that the property is enough security for the loan for them. They're happy with that. And so therefore they don't care if we put everything else in our family trust. It took many years for the South African banks to understand what I do, and they attend my seminars, and thereafter some of them even sponsored my seminars. They paid for my seminars. So that is just the reason why I mentioned this, that they paid for the seminars, is they approve, and they approved with their money of what we are doing. So it's 100% legit, double trust structure, one for assets, one for liabilities.
Great. Kurt, I think you've already stirred a lot of people here. We're getting quite a few questions here coming through on that one. And, it's such an interesting topic, and we're really going to deep dive into it now. So, Anne-Marie, you tell us a little bit more about how we go about setting up a double trust structure. I mean, is this something that just any attorney can assist with? I mean, is there a specific way that you do it? Do you want to maybe share that with us?
Sure, Neale. So any attorney can, but the question should rather be, should any attorney do your trusts for you? So there's a lot of attorneys that will draft a trust deed for you, and they will act as an independent trustee, but they won't necessarily have the know-how to create the trust in such a manner that you enjoy all the benefits Kurt spoke about. And he will still speak on it a bit later on. So that's the very first important thing just to keep in the back of your mind. So it is extremely important to get a trust specialist to draft your trust, set up your structure, and act as independent trustee, because you may have a properly drafted trust deed, but poor administration with that will not give you a proper outcome.
Okay, great. So, Kurt, I think you just touched on the edge of this whole double trust structure. Can you go into a little bit more in terms of how does it work, and specifically for the protection of assets? And I think you said at the outset, you are the poorest man on this webinar right now. So maybe just share that one with us.
See, you end up in a situation where you really have nothing in your personal name anymore. So what we advise people is to make that list that I spoke about as complete as possible, from the biggest to the smallest. Everything should be on that list, even the creepy crawly. So everything is on it. So you have nothing, absolutely nothing in your personal name. Because what few people are aware of is the fact that if creditors come after you, if you cannot pay, for whatever reason, you lost your job, you cannot pay that bond on that townhouse anymore that you rent out, or whatever the case may be, or your tenant absconded, There are so many things that can go wrong, and then we must protect what we made so far up to that point. So when I make my money with my property trust, I move it over to my family trust. And the moment that I move the profits or the cash or whatever over to the family trust, then it's untouchable, 100% untouchable, because in the family trust, we make sure we never have any creditors. That's one of the golden rules of a TTS family trust. When I say TTS, it's one at Anna-Marie Draft, Treasury Trust Services Trust. That's different from other trusts. So then creditors cannot take your assets. They can take the liability and they can come after your furniture, and then they will just say it belongs to a trust. There's nothing they can do. They cannot touch it. And we've been around the block a few times with this. People challenged us in the old days. Nowadays, I think for the last 10 years, Anna-Marie, I cannot remember of anybody who challenged us in a court of law anymore, because they lose every time.
No.
So, you see, our systems are solid, 100% solid. And that is the big thing, Neale. Sorry, am I missing the point
No,
now?
please carry on. Yeah.
Can I carry on?
Please do. Yes. I mean, this is riveting stuff.
Okay. No, okay, what is it? Important benefit of this, or consequence, if you can call it, is the fact that you become unsequestratable as a natural person. Because when a creditor wants to sue you, because they see I still drive that fancy car, and this lifestyle audit thing, they can come and do it, and they will see I live in a mansion and I drive a fancy car, and they will also, when they go deeper in, they will see it's not my car, it is not my house, it's not even my clothes that I'm wearing here at the moment. I have nothing, absolutely nothing. I'm sitting here in my house in Pretoria and have a house in Cape Town. So none of them belong to me, none of them. But I'm the only one who can decide who lives in that house, because I'm a trustee on the trust and I'm a beneficiary on that trust. But the secret is, and Anna-Marie touched on it, the secret of this whole thing, and I'm giving away one of our secrets now, is it will only stand in court if you have a proper independent trustee in all your trusts. That is the most of the time, if you go back on court cases and so on, and that is something that Anna-Marie and her staff do regularly, is they check the court cases. So we know what happened in court cases related to trust many times. So then we pick up tips from when the judge rule against the trust, then there must be something wrong with that trust. And we try and find out what was it that gave him that ruling or idea to make that ruling in favor against the trust, in favor of the creditors. And so we discovered all these things over the years, and it boils all down to, most of the time, I would say 99% of the cases is because the independent trustee that most people use is not really independent. It is either a family member, or it's the accountant of the trust, or it's the attorney of your attorney. It cannot be. So Anna-Marie is a trust lawyer, and she is actually the independent trustee on many, many trusts, thousands of trusts. But not Anna-Marie herself, the company is. Anna-Marie is the nominee of the company. The company is TTS Trust Services. That is the independent trustee. That is a truly independent trustee. Anna-Marie will not go with you on lunch. She won't play with you golf. She will never become your friend. She's just your trustee. The moment that she plays golf with you or take you out on lunch, and then somebody sees you and take a picture, then she's not independent anymore. That trust, of which is the independent trustee, then is in danger. We'll have to get somebody else. So
But
that
can I
is,
perhaps add to that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
So when we register a trust, or when a trustee is appointed, they are appointed by the Master of the High Court. If you say you are the independent trustee, you need to complete a couple of questions, and you sign it as an affidavit, just to attest to the fact that you are truly independent. Now, to be independent, you can't be related by blood or other. Now, I mean, the other will include any other services, any other relationship. And then there's a couple of other things that you also need to take into account. And one of them being, you are able to run or manage the trust together with the co-trustees in a professional manner and comply with your fiduciary duty.
Thanks, Anna-Marie. That shows you how thorough this thing should be done, and to be able to stand in court. But that is making the difference. That is making the big difference. The fact that it is properly independent. Oh yes, something I wanted to say is, if it would have been possible for creditors to come to me eventually and sue me because I do not have a really independent. Because if you do not have a really independent trustee, then the sorry,
The court.
court.
It's all good.
Amper Afrikaans gepraat het.
Yeah.
The court will rule that the trust assets are actually your assets, and then they take your house and they take your car because you do not have an independent. Then they say the trust is just an extension of yourself. It's just your alter ego. Those are the words that the judges use. But now having a proper independent trustee, then you will never get a ruling of that. The trust is on its own, the family trust, where all the assets are. So now I cannot be sequestrated, although I owe nothing. And that's actually why I cannot be sequestrated. If you do not own anything, then you cannot be sequestrated. When your creditors sue you in your natural, in your person, then they have to prove to the court that I have assets. And they can't, because I have none. I can actually, as a matter of fact, I can prove to the court that I have nothing. I can show a zero balance sheet from my auditors. Audited the whole thing, zero. So then the point here is, if I cannot be sequestrated, I cannot lose control. Because my only control that I have, without being seen as the outright control, because it's trustees that control, but I am always on the board of trustees of my trust, all my property trust, all my liability trust, I'm on the board of trustees. If I'm sequestrated, then I'm not allowed to be anymore. So people, guys watching, you can just remember this. Certain conditions to be a trustee on a trust, on your own trust, and that is you must not be sequestrated, you must be solvent, and you must be older than 21.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you spelled it out very nicely there, Kurt. Anna-Marie, Kurt did touch on it a little bit earlier. In terms of the administration, the details very important. You spoke about the independent trustee, but also the administration. And so what are the benefits of using a company like Treasury Trust Services? And obviously you are the service provider for Wealth Masters Trust, because I think that's important, because Kurt's really talking about if you get challenged, you're going to need to go to court. So maybe just elaborate a little bit more on the importance of that.
So Neale, we specialize in trusts. That's all we do. The trust advisors are admitted attorneys in the High Court of South Africa. So you work with attorneys and other specialized team as well. That's all we do. So we focus on that. We focus on your structures, and we obviously know exactly what needs to happen in certain circumstances. So that's very important. Second important thing is, under our group of companies, we've got trust specialists for accounting, property specialists, conveyances, etc. So everything is under one roof to ensure the clients can invest in their proper structures, and everything is managed properly in accordance with the Wealth Mastery system. So it makes it a bit easier for the clients to have that one-stop shop to meet all their needs.
Okay, so carry on, good.
Can I just add something there? It's very important what Anna-Marie said there. We provide all these services, but we provide them from different entities. Especially for that reason, if Anna-Marie becomes involved with accounting, then she's not independent anymore of that trust. So she can sign off the financials at the end of the year. She should. That is what she's doing, actually. She will sign it off, but that's the only involvement that she has, for example, in accounting. So we have a trust accounting business, which is Destinata Accounting, and they actually do all the tax wonders. We have, all the miracles and all those things. They do that. Anna-Marie is just with the administration. So Anna-Marie's administration will be regarding making sure that when there's a new property, that the property trust buys a new property, that the correct resolutions and stuff are filed with the correct institutions to establish or to make sure that the trust interests and rights are protected properly.
Great.
That's right.
So let's get into it more of the detail there, Anna-Marie. So if somebody has properties in their own name, or they're either going to buy property. So maybe let's talk a little bit about what are the steps that need to be taken in a business, or whether you have a few properties and you've got them in your own name, you want to move those assets into the correct trust structures. How do you go about that?
Sure. So firstly, we obviously need to set up your trust structures. Every single trust needs a separate bank account and needs a tax number. to be seen as a separate entity. So that's very important to note.
Do they still work with fax numbers? Sorry to interrupt. Do they still work with
tax?
fax?
Sorry, income tax number.
Okay, thank you. I thought I heard fax.
Tax.
Tax.
Yeah. So if you've got property in your personal name, it can be transferred into the trust structure, and there we will look at your specific need, if there's a bond, etc., and advise you what will be the easiest way to get the property from your name into the trust structure. If you don't have properties, or if you want to start buying properties directly in the name of the trust will apply for a bond. The trust will be the owner. As Kurt said, the banks will still look at you to sign surety, and the banks will also look at your affordability up until the trust has built up a portfolio. Then obviously they will look at the trust income as well. So it's definitely possible to transfer existing properties or just to start buying directly in the property trust.
Okay.
And that's the same for all other assets. Sorry, Neale, to interrupt. No. There's just a different process depending on the type of assets. So if it's movable assets, as Kurt said, you need to draw up an inventory of all the assets. That will be dealt with in a different manner. But that will also be discussed in depth with the clients during the consultations to make sure the clients know exactly which steps needs to be taken when and which assets needs to be transferred to which trust.
Okay, so if you got a property, you got it in your own name, you'd like to move it into a trust, can you maybe just elaborate on that? Should we sell the property to the trust? Maybe, how do we move that into a trust structure?
Sure. So there's different methods. It will be seen as a change of ownership because it's going to be transferred and recorded at the deeds office. So you can't just move the property out of your name into the trust. So you will either sell it to the trust can apply for a bond, or you can finance that transaction. Either way, it will be sold to the trust. And then there's also a different method, the ALA method. It's in accordance with an old act, the Alienation of Land Act, which is also an option where the trust will basically take over the bond. So then the trust doesn't have to qualify. So that can work very well for clients transferring their own properties to a trust, especially if you've got a very good interest rate. So then there won't be any new applications, no bond registration or cancellation fees. The trust will be taking over the bond, and there will be specific terms and conditions set out in a specialized agreement in terms of which the trust will then take transfer of that property. So the end result is the trust will become the owner of that property.
Okay, so a lot of this starts conjuring up costs. What does that cost? I think first of all, maybe just to set up a trust, and then I think also, in terms of the transfer and moving assets.
So not every single client structure will look the same. So during that first consultation, a wealth coach will sit with the client and determine the ideal structure, after which they will then present the client with a quotation for their specific structure. But the tax savings will most probably in the immediate future already be much more than your structure costs. If we look at the transfer of properties, there will unfortunately be costs involved. So if the property is more than 1.1 million in value, there will be a state duty calculated on that, but also depending on the method that you use to transfer it to the trust, the costs will also differ. All right. So once again, we'll look at the client-specific need, the type of property. We may transfer a primary residence in a different manner than an investment property. So then the costs will also be different.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, Kurt, just over to you now. Just like to, because you've spoken a lot about this sequestration thing, and we know that, when you do register trust, it's in, the master's office. And if we had to have a challenge, it's going to be a high court challenge. We're not going to fight this battle in the magistrate's court. Is that correct? You want to maybe just elaborate in terms of the jurisdiction of a trust, and maybe just a little bit wider on that, if there are sort of accredited type issues?
Yes, a trust is one thing that I can mention is that trust is a very wide, respected entity to use in South Africa. I think the biggest protector of, before I go to the biggest protector, there were cases in the past where government wanted to change certain aspects of the trust law, of the Trust Property Control Act. Now, people think also, many attorneys, because they teach very little about trust at university, and Anna-Marie can confirm as a lawyer herself, the part that they teach about trust at university is actually shocking. It is so little. But anyways, so many years ago, the government wanted to, they appointed a commission, the Davis Commission, I think it was. Was it the Davis Commission, Anna-Marie? The first one that wanted to work with authors to see how they can abolish the conduit principle of trust.
Yes.
And who was it? Anna-Marie? Was it him, Davis?
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, doesn't matter who the judge was in charge of the commission. They didn't change anything in the trust, and they tried a few years later again with another judge, and again nothing came of that either. So why it stopped the investigation or the commissions that they appoint, I do not really know exactly what it is. But what I do know is Julius Malema said a few years ago that he will make sure that they take land in South Africa, all land, whether it belongs to a trust or not. He doesn't care. They will take it. And one of the presidents also confirmed that that might help to with the poverty problem in South Africa if they take all land, whether it belongs to a trust or not. And that was in it was now in President Ramaphosa's time. But anyways, it was about 3 years ago. And then in the newspapers thereafter, that was they made they said these things on a Saturday at the rallies and so on. And the next week, Monday, in the newspapers was full of it, because especially me interested in these things, I pick it up. Most other people perhaps did not pick it up. Was that both of them were called to the palace of King Goodwill Solatini in those days. He was still the king. And they had to apologize to the king and withdraw their words and all those things. And even Julius went there. Can you believe that? And so what we do know about the king, the Zulu king, even the present king, is that he is the trustee of the biggest property trust in South Africa. Ngwama Trust, I think is the right word. So that is a very, very big property trust. It is based on exactly the same trust laws that ours. Now, do you think the king of the Zulus, because what the king said those days, it was on that Sunday in the newspaper, he already said that if they do this, you touch the land of the Zulus, and I will mobilize the whole Zulu army, and I will destroy this government. So that's why they all went back to apologize. So yes, that is perhaps the highest court of law for a trust, is the Zulu kingdom. Otherwise, all on the size of the claim that will determine whether it's an high court or whether it is in a magistrate's court.
It's so interesting, Kurt, because, the government, and there's been a lot that's been published, about government changing trust laws and all that kind of stuff. And it seems to be an ongoing debate, and it rears its head every time at the end of every single tax year. But as you say, nothing gets done. And it's probably exactly for that very reason why you're saying that. I mean, you're going to then just destroy massive amounts of wealth, which has been accumulated over decades, and legacies so that's probably why, how would it get passed? I mean, because maybe that's something that we need to discuss.
You see that commission also, that very first commission that was appointed in 1994 when government came into power, that commission still exists, but the only thing that they do is they just register a free family trust for every new member of parliament, and they manage it. They are independent trustees on that trust. So the point is now they now all have trust. It's very unlikely that they will change the trust law ever. And
Yeah.
it's
So what I
pretty-
can perhaps add to that is there were changes very recently to the trust law, but they didn't touch the benefits.
Yeah.
So there's just a bit more compliance that we will in any event take care of, but they've not changed the benefits of a trust.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So I just want to say to the audience, if you've got questions, please, submit your questions. I mean, I've got lots of questions here for both Kurt and Anna Marie. I think it's extremely insightful, and but Kurt, this is bigger than just property and everything else. This goes into your estate planning. This goes into everything you do. I mean, surely.
Yeah, that's true. I'm so glad you touched on that, Neil. It replaces estate planning. Estate planning, for the Afrikaans listeners, boedelbeplanning, it replaces it completely. You won't have an estate anymore. And because I don't have an estate, nothing. When I die today, I die a pauper. I will, because I'm so poor. Fortunately, Vanessa will have money to pay me properly, because she's controlling the trust money. You see, that is the point. If a person who do not have the structures in place, if you die, if one spouse dies, the whole estate is frozen immediately from time of death. All the bank accounts are frozen. Everything is frozen. You cannot sell a house, you can do nothing. You have to ask permission from the executors all the time if you want to do something. And winding up the estate, especially of a big estate, can take many years. It will take anything from, you can say, 6 months to 2 years for ordinary estate, but it can take longer if it's a bigger estate. So that is how long then it will take for the spouse or the heirs to get access to the wealth. They have no access to it. The executors run it for their account. Actually, they get 6% of the profits while they run it. Now you understand why it takes so long. They drag their feet. It is their benefit to drag their feet. But in the meantime, the family is suffering. Now, by having the wealth mastery system in place, these trusts and so on, means that if I die today, tomorrow, or the same time today, still Vanessa will have full control of the assets, everything. And also, there won't be any death costs. And the death cost is a lot. Anna Marie, I think it's 25%, or what is the
So it's between 20 and 25%, depending on the value of your estate, and then obviously there's still all the other costs.
But a lot of other things also, like capital gains tax, everything. It works out to about close to 50% of your estate will have to be liquidated, or you should have that kind of cash or liquidity in your estate to pay for all the taxes, because it is payable in cash. It's the only way. If there's not enough cash, then they start selling the assets on their auctions that they control, the executors, at 50% or lower of the value of the stuff. So it's actually a wipeout. Every person in South Africa who's not on this system, and it's for centuries already, they always have to, every generation have to start from the beginning again and again and again and again. So by putting the trust in place, the trust lives forever. For as long as the trustees wants it to live, which will be forever. Why will you stop the trust? So if there's not a law saying is to stop, it will live forever. You see, that's the thing of the Duke of Westminster. That's what I learned from the Duke. That was the big thing that I discovered, was that the Duke was the 19th title holder in his family, controlling the assets of 400 years. Now, controlling the assets of 19 title holders over a period of 400 years, and that's it already. So every generation just add more value, add more value, add more value. Because the Duke of Westminster was considered back in 1996 the richest person in the world, because he was considered the biggest property owner in the world. But nobody could ever say how rich he really is, because everything is in trust. Everything's in trust. He was just as poor as me, the real man, Hugh Grosvenor. Well, now it is Hugh Grosvenor. His dad was Daryl Grosvenor in 1996. So they have nothing. And that is the way of the English rich and royals. That is how you create real wealth.
Wonderful. But of course, it has its downside, Kurt. I mean, I can't take Anna Marie for lunch or play golf with her.
No,
I'm so sorry, Neale.
Okay, so we've got questions over here. And question here from Mark, and it's a very pertinent one. I have 19 properties registered in my own name as a sole proprietor. And I've heard that there is a section 42, which will allow me to transfer these properties into a PTY trust structure without too much cost. Is this so? Who wants to have a crack? Good, or you, Anna Marie?
Anna-Marie,
So, sorry, I can't remember the person who asked the question's name.
It was Mark. It was Mark.
Mark.
Yes.
So, Mark, there is definitely a possibility to do a Section 42, but during your first consultation, that will be discussed in depth to see what the possibilities are and also what your current structure and the ideal structure will be in order to get the assets out of your name into a proper structure. You don't just want to move it to a different structure, you want to get it in a proper structure. Okay.
if I can also add something,
Yeah.
moving the properties, the 19 properties, that is something that you should definitely do, Mark. And we do have ways of minimizing the cost considerably. So you won't pay, normally it would have been the normal transfer duties that you had to pay, which can be like up to 13% of the value of the property. But we have ways to even cut that with 75%, that normal way, if you want to do it that way, or we do the ALA, as Anna-Marie already discussed, the Alienation of Land Act move. Then it is actually a little bit of money. You just pay about 4,000 for the contract, and that's it.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks. There's a question here from Nikka, and I know you've already sort of touched on it already, Kurt, and he's talking specifically about the family home. So your home lies outside of the trust structure. Do you want to maybe just explain, because you touched on the double trust structure. So maybe do you just want to elaborate there for Nikka?
Yes, please. Thanks for asking. This very important. The family home should never be in a family trust. Never. This is a big mistake that many people make. They separate the assets from liabilities, and they put the people who try to take the shortcuts, people who don't want to come through our ways and so on, they try and do it at home, and these things are very dangerous if you try and do this at home. So family home, there's a reason why the family house, no property, fixed property should be in a family trust, because we keep creditors away from the property trust. Creditors, there should be no creditors. Even when in the beginning, when you come to Anna-Marie and her people and the accountants, then they will advise you that if you still owe money on your car, then pay it off first, then we will move it in a trust. It's just a book entry to get it into the trust thereafter. But as long as there's a creditor involved in a car, you have to keep in your personal name or put it in a liability trust rather. But a house is something that has a mortgage on it, for example, and you don't want to go to the hassle of getting a new mortgage now. So put it in, keep it in your personal name, pay it off if you want to, because there's debt in it. But the thing is, as you pay more of the mortgage off, it turns into an asset eventually. So the best way, I would say, for the family trust is we have another trust, what we call the residence trust. That is a trust that we set up for the type of properties that you are not letting out, that you're not going to refinance. It might be your holiday flat, it might be a farm even, it might be your personal residence. Put them in a separate trust because of the creditors. Now, some people will then say, but if I paid the bond off, if it is fully paid, there's no creditor. They are so wrong. There's always a creditor on a house. And if you take a look at the sheriff's sale of execution auctions that he's doing, then you will see that many of the most of the sale of execution auctions of properties go on auction are actually because of unpaid levies, if it is in a complex, or unpaid service fees to the municipality. It is most of the time the municipality is taking the houses to auction. So they are the worst creditor of all creditors. So don't think it is just a bank that is a creditor. There are many creditors. That is why it should never be in a family trust, whether it's fully paid or not.
So, Kurt, I just want to you to elaborate a little bit on this, and Anna-Marie, I can bring you in as well, because very much on the detail. We've had quite a few people that said hit hard times, lost their job, and you said it right up front, Kurt. And their house that they owned, which is their house, is in a trust, and the only solution they look at is to say, well, I need to now sell my property. But we know that if you sell your property in a trust, I think we're paying something like 40% capital gains tax or something to that sort. How do we get around something like that?
Can I answer that one, Anna-Marie?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, sometimes, or say the fact that it's in a trust doesn't mean that it is not, you cannot, the trust cannot lose that property. If the bond is not paid, then the banks will take it. They will sue the trust, they will take the property and sell it. So the trust will be liquidated. Yes, that'll happen. So no, then you sell it. That is what I advise. If you really cannot afford to pay it anymore, you cannot get a tenant to pay the mortgage fees, then sell it, get rid of it. That capital gains tax, no problem. It's 100% tax free. With our method, with the wealth mastery system, with the
Okay, correct.
conduit
Well, that's
principle.
important. I think the important, if there is equity in the property, that of course you would like to get out of that sort of tax-free. Okay,
Yeah.
we still got another question here from Ben, and Ben said, would you recommend owning a trust in Mauritius to control the South African trust? Because I think what we've been seeing is there's quite a lot of people moving for tax reasons, you know, setting up companies in a very low sort of tax haven environment. What are your thoughts around that, Kurt?
No, I'm not so much in favor of offshore properties anymore. I was in old days and I bought a few, but it's not something I will do anymore. A very important thing is investing in properties is that you should know your area. You should know your country and or the country in which you buy. And I mean, very good. You must know it well. If you want to make your money with property, and if you want to become a property investor, and you want to retire one day, like me, as a property investor, because you don't have to work, you only work if you want to, like me, and when I want to. It's not always as I grow older, but anyways, become a specialist. So if you say to me, you want to buy in Australia, I have no problem with property in Australia, but then you must go and live there and be a specialist and know what the market is, what is happening in the market, read everything about it, talk to people, go to clubs, go to places where people gather, join property clubs, and become a professional in that country. But we live here, so why go anywhere else? We have one of the best property markets in the world, but then you must buy the right property. And because of all the problems that we have in the country, for us here in South Africa, it's a lot easier to determine what is the right one or the right area and what is the wrong area. Just to use two extremes. I'm not going to buy next to a squatter camp. Or I'm not going to buy next to government land. Even if there's a squatter camp, it doesn't matter. But if it is government land, I stay away because there might be a squatter camp in 5 years from now. So those little things are things that you won't know in other countries. Here we know it. And I, for example, say, buy close to hospitals. And I'm saying it already for many, many years. Close to schools, close to hospitals, but especially the hospital part came so true. So many people came to me, people who bought close to hospitals, so they came to me during COVID. And they said, thank you. That was the best advice I ever got from you. And that was like 15 years before COVID that I gave that advice. Because there was one industry that worked very well during COVID, and that was the medical industry, hospitals. Right time, right place, right close to universities. So little things, I'm just touching on a few here. There's a lot more. It's you must come to the full presentation, then you will hear a lot more. But that is why the point that I want to make, it's easier for a South African to become a property specialist in South Africa, just like it is easier for an Australian to become a property specialist in Australia. Stick to what you know. The devil you know is better than the one you don't.
Great stuff. We got a question here from Daryl, and I think it leans towards your side there, Anna Marie. Moving assets into a trust, to my understanding, needs to be done via donation. That is maximum 100,000 Rand tax-free, or loans. Ignoring donations, which is a small amount, how does one minimize the loan on one's individual balance sheet, especially considering that interest needs to be accrued, which is substantial and tax inefficient for those at the 45% tax rate? Who wants to have a crack at that? Anna Marie?
Yeah, I don't mind, Kurt, except if you want to get this one.
Okay, I'll take it because Anna Marie is not accountant. Okay. So you can help me, Anna Marie. I'm also not an accountant, but I have a bit of a knowledge of all of it. Yeah. Obviously she's quite right. So let's take an example. If you move all your movables into a trust and it works out to 600,000 Rand, just to use a figure, all the value, because we work on the lowest possible value that we can get. You make a list of all your movables, all the content of your house, and then you go to a second-hand dealer and you get a valuation. And it won't be much. So the lower the better. It's not the time now to prove how rich you are. It's time to try to be as poor as possible. And then we move that list into the trust. And then the trust is buying the furniture from you as the individual. So yes, that is where the capital gains tax and so on might come in, but it's also definitely where the loan account is coming in. So the trust, one thing that we never do is the family trust will not pay money for it, even if it has money. But it's a brand new trust, it doesn't have money. So, but even if it had some money, some cash never leaves the trust. So we create a loan account. And then we work the loan account away with our 100,000 donation every year. Even if it takes 4 years, 6 years, well, then 600,000, I think it will take about 6 or 7 years with the loan account. So yes, we have it. It is just a loan between me and my own trust. So I'm not going to sue anybody. The trust is not going to sue me. So they will just have to wait for their money. Oh, SARS will charge interest. You don't have to trust the interest, but SARS is going to charge you tax on the interest that you were supposed to charge. Understand? And I think, Anne-Marie, it's about 10%, if I remember correctly. That
So,
Carry on.
I just wanted to add on, I'm reading Daryl's question. So you're quite right with the donation or the loans. So Daryl, if ever your loan account gets to the amount that you need to start declaring the tax in your personal name, at least you still have that exemption. I think it's about 23,800 that you can deduct off the interest. So I think your loan needs to get to about 1.5 million before you will get to the point where you need to declare the interest in your personal name. Yeah, just to give you an idea more or less. But the accountants will also manage that for you properly, just to make sure they use that 100,000 to the maximum, either to donate the assets or then to utilize it to cover the interest portion first, and then the balance as a repayment of loan. Yeah, good. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
No, what I can say, just add to this, is that rest assured we are aware of all these things, Section 7C, all of them, and we know how to manage them, because also at Destinata Accounting, our accounting firm, there we have trust practitioners, also registered trust practitioners working for the company. So they take care of all these things.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, geez, I can't believe where the time's gone. I mean, we've got about 5 minutes left of the webinar. So what I'm going to ask each one of you is just to give your 2-minute wrap, and maybe just to leave somebody with some advice over here, and your last sort of parting shots. So maybe, Anne-Marie, let's start off with you, ladies first, and then of course we'll ask Kurt to give his final thoughts.
Yes, I think we touched on a lot of subjects today, but I think the most important thing to remember is you really want specialists to look at your specific structure or to create your structure from scratch, just to get the basics right. We can guide you throughout the process, manage the structures for you, do the compliance of the structures. And once again, everything is under one roof, which makes it a bit easier. Yeah, so you're welcome to get in touch with us and we'll help you get everything sorted out.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks very much, Anne-Marie. I think that was great insight over there. And Kurt, we're going to end off with you. I know you got a slide or two that you might want to just pop up on your screen, but your final thoughts, your parting shots for the audience here today.
Okay. Right. Can you see my...
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yes, guys, if you need any information, you can contact Real Estate Investor Magazine, or you can contact us. You're welcome. But what I want to share, what I want to end with is make sure that you know what we are talking about, or rather who we are talking about, because from experience we know, and we are doing the seminars and the club already since 2003, but we apply the system already since 1996 in my personal portfolios. So it's working, but then it must be the right trust and it must be correctly administered. So you are going to get in touch eventually. Doesn't matter who you call now for for advice, you will at some time be a client or or go for a consultation with Treasury Trust Services, where Anne-Marie is the managing director. We have offices in Cape Town, Pretoria, and Durban. So wherever you are, you work with the closest office to you. And then I just want to make sure that you know the Destinata Holdings, they are doing the trust accounting for us, tax services, property sales, and management. So we have companies, different companies in that holding company doing all these things. So just remember the names: Treasury Trust Services, TTS in short, and Destinata. Those are the companies that you're going to work with. And we as a club, we are overseeing everything. So if you are unhappy with service anywhere, you just contact the club, and then we sort them out. Okay, so we have a real sergeant major working for us, and she's not easy. So beware, guys. Any trust is not a TTS trust. As I said, a trust is a contract. A trust is, that trust deed is actually a contract between the founder and the trustees on how the trustees will manage the assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Now, like any contract, the wording of the contract is determining whether it's a good one or not. So ours is a good one. It stood many times in many court cases already, and it won every time. Then it's good administration. You can have the best trust deed in the world, but if it is not administered correctly in terms of such regulations, government regulations, all those things, then it is worthless. So then you have a TTS trust if everything is done correctly. Right, so only a TTS trust will work for the structure because of special wording and administration. And that is it. That is what I wanted to share as a closing comment here. Guys, don't try this at home. Okay, you're going to burn your fingers. And don't work with your old family accountant, because most probably they don't know what we are talking about. And they will just rather try to talk you out of it. Come for a consultation. Excellent. And then you can decide. You don't have to decide now. The consultation is for free because of the fact that you are attending here now. Otherwise, the consultation would have cost you 1,900 Rand per hour. So now you have it for free. I suggest you make use of it, and then you can decide.
Excellent. Good. Great way to finish. Anne-Marie Skitter of Destinata and Kurt Katsir Wealth Masters, thank you very much. I think for your valuable contribution today. This is now the conclusion of today's webinar. I encourage you to reach out and engage with Kurt, Anne-Marie, and obviously the Wealth Masters team as well. And those of you that have actually requested a consultation with the Wealth Masters team, they will make contact with you, or you can email info@rei.co.za. If you didn't get the details, I know there is a link on the bottom of the page on the chat box. You can also go there as well. But to you, the audience, thank you for joining us today, for your participation. Yes, there will be a recording, and I know there was a lot of people asking if there's going to be a recording. We will send it through to the list. We will give you the same opportunity to reach out, of course, to the Wealth Masters team as well. So we hope you got value from today, and I hope that everyone's eyes opened up to new opportunities, how to structure your business and your property investments. And as Benjamin Jowett said, the real measure of our wealth is how much we'll be worth if we lost all our money. And as Kurt said, he's the pauper on the block. So wonderful. I think it's been fantastic. Just our next event, our next webinar is again at next Thursday, the 25th of May, from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Again, it's titled How to Achieve Above Average Returns by Investing in a Struggling Economy. And to register, you just go to the REI website under upcoming events, and you click on the link below, or in the chat box. I think there'll also be a link there as well. So to all of you, once again, Kurt and Anne-Marie, thank you once again for your valuable insights. Please reach out to them. To all of you, thank you once again for joining us. Stay safe and successful investing. This is Neale Petersen of Real Estate Investor signing out. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.